Hi, everybody. It's Tim Constantine from the Washington Times, joined as I am each week for America, David Bozell. Hi, David.
Timothy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. Happy Easter to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
He has
Hope the
risen.
Easter Bunny did well. Yes, he has.
Hey, question for you. Congress recently passed this little $1.2 trillion package. And I know there were a lot of people very excited that everybody was singing Kumbaya and working together on this. I wanted to get your impression.
It's a terrible piece of legislation. I mean, the fact that it's not just like the majority of Democrats voting for it. It's like clear in a way, like the majority, only the squad didn't vote for it. And that's how many Democrats voted for it. And Mike Johnson lost the majority of Republicans. He's running effectively a coalition government with the Democrats. I don't really understand the strategy behind the political decision making. I don't understand his interpretation of the politics of the moment. Not that I don't understand. I disagree with his assessment of shutdown politics. He wants to brag about we're only allowed to put up American flags at military bases now. I guess that's great. That's great. But to me, that's like, I remember when the Washington Mystics, the WNBA basketball team, when they were terrible, and they would hang up attendance banners in the rafters.
Right.
That's what it kind of feels like to me. This is all we're crowing about is making sure that the Democrats don't put up something other than the American flag at a military base. Beyond that, there wasn't really much to brag about. Hence, he didn't hear him bragging about it.
The perpetual threat is government shutdown. Oh, we can't have a government shutdown. People will go hungry. Yeah. People will die. This will be the worst thing that ever happened. I've been through several shutdowns, as have you, and somehow everything still seems to function. And if you're a government employee, they tend to have their pay delayed during that. They don't work, but they still get paid. At the end, somebody decides, we'll make it all up to them. So I'm not sure a whole lot happens other than generating a lot of news media during those shutdowns, but are they a bad thing? And I don't mean is shutting down the government a bad thing, but I'm meaning using that as a tool to try to force people to apply common sense rather than just saying, well, we got to pass something. Is the shutdown just a horrible, horrible threat that we must avoid literally at any cost, like $1.2 trillion? Or is it something that some people should entertain and think, you know what, it's worth some inconvenience to do this thing right?
Well, Chuck Schumer uses the threat of shutdown against Republicans. He dares Mike Johnson to shut the government down. He dared Kevin McCarthy to shut the government down. And every Republican predecessor, every minority or Democrat leader or president has dared the Republican to do it. So the Democrats use it all the time. If
I were speaker, I would say, okay. If I'm dead serious, I would say, okay, if that's what it takes to get us to a reasonable point, I would go ahead. But I would, carefully communicate the message that this is why this is happening. And both sides try to blame each other, of course, and the media tends to lean in one direction. But in general,
that's what Nancy Pelosi did. Nancy Pelosi bullied the president into a shutdown. So nobody blamed her. Now we can get into arguments about, who the media blames and those types of things, and the big bag bullies in the liberal media.
But who actually gets hurt during a government shutdown? They don't stop issuing Social Security checks. They don't. There's always the threat of the scare tactics. Those things don't happen. The VA doesn't shut down. You still treat elderly veterans. So who gets hurt during the shutdown?
Every agency has shutdown contingency plans. The military goes on as normal. These are all sort of media fabrications that are not accurate at all. And I think the country understands that those are all fabrications. And the sun rises the next day during a shutdown, and life goes on. More so, though, what I really disagree with is with the speaker's assessment of the shutdown politics. We will lose because of a shutdown, or Republicans will lose because of a shutdown. Yes, Trump lost in the subsequent election after he shut down the government in 2018. But that was largely because of COVID. The next longest shutdown happened in 2014, prior to those elections in 2014 midterms. Republicans shut down the government during Obama. They picked up 9 seats in the Senate and 34 seats in the House.
Dave, I've been studying politics literally all my life. I've been working in this world all my life. At no point did I tie Trump's loss, even in the deepest, darkest recesses of my mind. And to put this in perspective, Trump was impeached at the beginning of 2020. Right. January of 2020 is when the actual impeachment took place. The American public wasn't even talking about impeachment at election time because their memory was so short, let alone talking about a government shutdown from 2 years prior to that. It's the idea that we're attaching the two of those together is absurd. And more importantly, to me, what if they just did the right thing? What if they said, this is a basic principle. We don't have this money. We can't spend it. I don't want to spend it on X, Y, and Z. So we're going to hold our ground. Oh, my God. What would be wrong with that?
Well, I mean, so now you're going to hurt me where it's a little personal. Mike Johnson got to the spot that he's in no small part because he has a document that he would pass around to anybody that he met with during his career as a kind of a backbencher in Washington, the 7 Principles of Conservatism. He loved it. And it's sort of what got him to this spot. I want that Mike Johnson back. Right. You know, wherever he went, I want that one back. Now, I understand he's going to have to bend the knee, I think, to national defense priorities for 2 reasons. One, he has Bossier City Air Force Base right in his backyard. And 2, he has Fort Polk right in his backyard. So he's got Air Force and Army right in his district. And the Air Force Base is the home of the B-2 fleet. So that's an important installation. Not to discredit some of the others, but I mean, that's an important installation. So I think he's going to defer to that. However, at some point, you've got to decide what case you're going to make to the American people with, if you bring me to the majority again, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what a Republican majority is going to look like. Currently, under 2 speakers, the Republican majority looks like the Democrat majority. Yeah. And so between now and the next September run at this, the next September funding package, they have to come up with something. It just can't be the same thing over and over and over again. And Ukraine's going to be the next test for him. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene will vacate the chair if he funds Ukraine.
And I refer to the Capitol Dome as the big top now because we are watching the greatest circus on earth. And with a difference of only 1 at this point between Republicans and Democrats, Ken Buck is leaving. We're down to a majority of 1. If they had trouble when they had 5 trying to find a speaker, how long will things go? If Marjorie Taylor Greene is successful, if she decides to go ahead and if she is successful in vacating the speaker's chair, then how long will the government go with no one in charge? And what message does that send the voter in the fall that, the Republicans were in charge of Congress, but they threw out not 1 speaker, 2 speakers, and now there is no speaker? What message politically does that send?
I actually think that they would survive. I don't think chaos is a problem, right? And I don't think conflict is a problem. You've got to remember, the country votes for conflict. We're very cyclical with who we put in power and which party is
going to be a short Republican cycle.
Right, but like up until from like 1930 to 1992, Democrats had control of the House nonstop, and then since then it's just it sort of just changes hands every 4 to 6 years. But chaos was never a part of I think the public's calculation. We're a divided country. We're going to divide. We vote for conflict.
Well, I don't mind conflict, but if the conflict is between the Republicans themselves, and then there is no speaker, and then there is no business of the people being done, that's not conflict. That is utter chaos. It is also unacceptable.
totally fair. And God forbid something happens militarily, Israel or Taiwan, and then what? What do you have, right? If you don't have a Congress to authorize a military pushback, or something happens at the border that you weren't expecting, and you don't have Congress to help authorize a response. But from what I've been able to discern from sources that I have on Capitol Hill, there is no one that's going to stop her from vacating the chair if Mike Johnson funds Ukraine before our own border. And so, the last time they did this, it took 6 weeks. So essentially, you could be looking at September. Well, they start voting in September,
and there's
an election season without a Republican speaker.
You could go from now until November without Congress taking any action whatsoever. That's not an exaggeration. If they vacate the chair because it's an election year, they don't do anything in the fall anyway. So you could go from now until November, and one of two things is going to happen. Either America is going to see, wow, we don't really need Congress to take that much action anyway. This is a good thing. They can't do any harm because they're not there. Or they're just going to think, wow, the Republicans were put in charge and completely blew it, and it will become a blue wave. Big.
Yeah, well,
my big worry, and this is my final question for you, my big worry, we've got a president who is not all there. And I don't say that to be mean-spirited. He is not firing on all cylinders. He is perceived internationally as weak. I was traveling in the Middle East a couple of weeks ago, and I get that question continually. Who's really in charge? Who's really in charge? Because no one around the globe believes Joe Biden is in charge. So if you've got a president that the world doesn't think is really there, and if you've got a Congress that very visibly is not there, how much danger is the United States in that bad actors are going to try to take advantage of that?
It's top of mind for me. And I mean, if you're Putin, right, you saw people hanging off the plane to get out of Afghanistan. So, okay, now's the time to go into Ukraine. If you're China, you see what Putin's doing, not being responded to very well by the United States. Now may be the time to go into Taiwan. You're Hamas, and you saw what Putin did in Ukraine and what China might do in Taiwan. Well, now's the time to go into Israel. So that's all. I think all that is a net effect of Biden not being altogether there. But that's the opportunity the Republicans have, right? The Republicans could stand up and say, as the closest representatives to you, we need to be the adults in the room and the adults in charge. These are the priorities that you elected us to accomplish, and we're going to fund them. If we have to bite our tongue on a couple of things to make sure that this government is operating smoothly and protecting American national security interests because Joe Biden isn't there, I think that's a message that they can carry. But they've got to get unified, and they all dislike each other personally. And I just don't see it happening with this.
When you say, this is an opportunity for the Republicans, I feel like they have lit the house on fire. And now they're going to say, oh, wait, maybe we can be the firemen and be the heroes here. And I'm just, For America, his name is David Bozell. I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. Thanks for joining us.